Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. My title of this short talk is going to be simply called The Whole Issues of Beliefs. That is Scientism and Religion. Part of the reason why I'm sharing this is that I see what I call the pendulum has swung so dramatically here in the last 100 years, so to speak, that it's become nothing what I would call short of simply beliefs. Uh, Christianity, what do you want to call it, religion. Religion would used to be what I would call, I hope it was called, was pursuing the truth. But and for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, religion has turned into a belief system, although it was not characterized in the past that way. And then science came along in a way to challenge that whole belief system that religion had basically had fell and moved away from what we call its true representation, and has gone said we're going to stand on science alone, alone, such and such, da da da. But then they gradually decided that God did not fit into that equation. You see, and so when you begin to push God out of the picture here, or creator, whatever word you want to use, but it's simply God is God. Um, there's no other explanation of how this universe actually has been created. There isn't. It's beyond man, by far beyond man, easily. And that's not a belief, you see. It's not a belief. Because we as human beings have not come to that whole focus of simply knowing. You see, we have put the belief on pedestal, so to speak, and we have actually failed to pursue our true, maybe not longing, but something seeking, I would say, to find out the reality of this universe, this whole apparatus here, what even the planet we're on. And so I've been reading briefly here today this particular book by author M. Young. And I have a couple of his books. This one's called Geometry of Meaning. The cover photo is really interesting because simply this is from William Blake. This was from his, excuse me here, let me take off my glasses here. This was a frontal piece of Europe, a prophecy, etching by William Blake in 1794. So this is what. And you'll see is not God looking at this. This is all about angles. Interesting, photo here, artwork. Then, so the first comment that gentleman here, author M. Young states he says in his introduction, says simply this, quote, all meaning is a angle. I don't know where I first encountered this enigmatic statement. I do recall that its origin was said to be in ancient Egypt, and I draw great comfort from this confirmation that there was at one time, perhaps so long ago that it was not even registered by Greek thought, a tradition that reflected the same conclusions I have reached after a lifelong effort of formulating meanings without reverting to the circularity found, for example, in dictionary definitions. Quote, and here again, another statement here. I would like to call this book an essay on philosophy. However, I should point out that I do not mean philosophy as it is usually practiced today, because philosophy is no longer being practiced in its way it should be, you see, but in the older sense of the science which investigates the facts and principles of reality. You see, reality. In this sense, philosophy not only encompasses the natural sciences, but explores the implication of the finding of science, and also deals with the relationship between the knower and the known. And so the whole idea is what's happened here, maybe over 100 years, is that science has also gone into, is actually chunked, I guess a good word for me, is chunked what we call looking for truth. They have chunked it. And it has become a belief system itself. We believe in science. That's the problem. Why would you say you believe in science just like you believe in religion? It's the same fallacy, you see, the same fallacy here. And so, that's why I put simply as I search for the truth. I'm looking for truth. I'm not interested in what others say or their opinions. I don't give a damn about their opinions. Okay? So I'll go in here also and see if I can share this also with you. This is from Charles S. Peirce, P-E-I-R-C-E. Another quote. This is in his introduction here section. Let me say something else. He states something here real quick. Let me say this at the bottom of the page. The enormity of the retreat from recognized as early as 1905, when the American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce berated metaphysicists for not pursuing truth more vigorously. And that's what's happening, folks. It's been going on. I'd say it's probably before then. Because simply, if he sees it in 1905, there had to be what I call at least 30 or 40 years before that. You see, because that was where the groundbreaking, the change began to change there, and being colleges started instituting their belief systems of science instead of actually seeking the truth. So here's a quote here again. This is a quote from him, Charles S. Peirce. Its business, that is, metaphysics, is to study the most general features of reality and real objects. But its present condition, it is even more than the other branches of what he called colonoscopy, the study of ordinary things, a puny, rickety, and superficial science. It's only too plain that those who pretend to cultivate it carry not the hearts of true men or of science within their breasts. Instead of striving with might and main to find out what errors they might have fallen into and exulting joyously at every such discovery, they are scared to look truth in the face. They turn tail and flee her. Only a small number out of a great catalog of problems, which is their business to solve, have ever been taken up at all, and those few most feebly. Here let us set down almost at random a small specimen of the question of metaphysics, which press not for hasty answers, but for industrious and solid investigation. Whether or not there be any real indefiniteness, or real possibility and impossibilities, whether or not there is any definite indeterminacy, whether or not there be any strictly individual existence. Quote, how the mighty have fallen. You see, this is the responsibility of science to search out the truth, the facts, not doing something, quote unquote, in a quote unquote laboratory, you see, with control aphorisms. You have this such and such and this that thing such and such. No, you discover it. You go out and pursue it and see it in the real world. You see, and so instead, see, this is what's really, see, they're controlling the experiment. They're not seeing it as it is. They're bringing it in a building and basically making a controlled experiment, which reality simply is leaving out the whole diameter, what I would call being out in the real world. And it's really sad where we're at, because we're far off than we were in 1905 with that statement. We're far away from it. This is why we have people who just say all kinds of ridiculous things on, Facebook or YouTube, whatever you call it, and it has no ounce of truth whatsoever in it. It's a fucking belief system. It's all beliefs. It's from one side of religion to the other side of science. They're both wrong. You see, it's not either or here anymore, folks. They're both wrong. They got their head up their tail, you see. They're not doing real science. They're not doing real religion, you see. And there's been what we call, I guess here in the 60s, maybe the 70s, so to speak, because I was born in 60. There's been this fight between, Christianity and science, so to speak, such and such, or faith. Both sides are, both sides are using faith, beliefs, have nothing to do with truth. Oh, yeah, they have a speckle of truth, such and such in it, you see, because what happened is simply is, you had what we call corporations that came in and decided that they wanted to have these controlled experiments. And so they gave these many universities, what they call top universities at that time, what we call research institutions, and gave them piles of money to do research. But it wasn't for the benefit of mankind. It was for their benefit of their own corporations. That's what it was about. So it was not a level field. It was interested in what I would call creating products, making products, you see, which basically what happened was simply to do with money. And that's what all these institutions are, your colleges have bought into, especially the ones who pursue in the area of science. The ones that you would simply put on a pedestal in some ways is gone. So it's just a short video. And I just thought I'd just share that with you because we have gone down the wrong path. Basically both sides are wrong. Both sides are wrong. Because religion looks at the interpretation of the Bible literally, you see, which is not literal, you see. It's not a literal interpretation. It's different. It's a different way because simply if they would have wrote the truth, that is what would be in the Bible, it would have never gotten on. It would not have gotten printed. Do you understand that? It would have never gotten printed. It never would have been put in the book. So they had to write what we call, stories, myths, in order to get their point across, because it would never have gotten on the printing press. Never. And even those who even tried, as William Tyndale and others some were Protestants, and I'm not saying Protestants are right here. That's not what I'm talking about here. The whole idea was to get the language, that is those people, that is in the vernacular, that is those that spoke that language, that is English, French, German, whatever. It would be in their language instead of Latin or in Greek, you see. In some ways, it was to get it in the vernacular so that people could understand it better. But in some ways, it also lost its what we call a veneration, because simply is in the Greek language or the Hebrew language, you were actually seeing what I would call the realism of that language. So in reality, in some ways, it was also a bad thing. But most people couldn't afford to go and learn Greek and Hebrew, you see. And so it should be put in vernacular. But now it's been watered down also. you see. And that was in Tyndale's era was in the 1500s. So we're talking over 500 years ago, roughly. I think it was 1536, something of that nature. A lot of this was taking place during the Renaissance when they discovered works that were basically lost, and then they found them, so to speak. But my point simply is that, and I've known this for quite a bit, that is science itself is just another belief system. It's just another fucking belief system. And the major universities here in the United States and elsewhere in Europe have basically all they've done simply is turn a blind eye to science and simply take the money and produce products that these corporations wanted, which has nothing to do with truth, has nothing to do with even with science. And there are many people who will do this, you see, because the banana is always in front of the donkey, the ass, you see. And those people are the asses, which is they're the assholes, choose to abandon the validity of truth for money. That's what they do. And that's in both camps. That is in the religious camp, and that is also in the science camp. Both sides do it. So no sides are really actually representing truth anymore, or even pursuing it. You see. So anyway, I just wanted to share this information to you. My channel is Discerning What is True. And I feel it simply I need to share that with you about this whole thing, especially from Arthur M. Young, which was a book that I'm not a scientist. That's not my background. I'm what we call a soft science, that is political science, sociology and psychology. But I can see that basically those sciences, that is the soft science, in some way have taken over also, especially psychology. I'm not saying psychology is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But what's happened has been put on a pedestal again. You see, people like Carl Jung and others have had enormous impact upon society. And one of the biggest changes in colleges these days is that they're producing what I call, back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, so to speak, and more in that was computer science was a big issue. You see, that's no longer the big issue anymore. It's still there, but it's not the most growth taking place. It's the area of psychology. And all this happens to go under what I call mental health, which is again now has been inspired by government institutions and other institutions to exploit the human being, not to actually help them. Very few do actually help in that category too. It's all about money. It's all about the fucking money, you see. And there is no principles in these areas anymore because everybody buys into the banana. I want that banana. I want a good job. I want to get paid well. I want security, whatever. And yet you are doing a poor job for humanity. You're supposed to be pursuing truth. You're supposed to be looking for it. You're supposed to be studying it and sensing it and what it's all about. Why are we here? Where do we come from? You see. And a lot of this also is an interesting story, is that we spend so much money going out in space, and yet we don't even know who we are. We spend tons and tons of money. Again, the government spends money on this, exploring space, when we haven't explored what's here on this planet with ourselves in a lot of ways. And where do we come from? Anyway, that's my spiel today. Wish you a good day. Again, take care. Talk to you soon.